one. All right, so we have talked a bit about
like all the things that you need to have a successful writing career. And one of those things are audiobook narration. And most authors want to know, how in the world did we begin this?
So to round up what we just talked about with marketing and PR and podcasting and what else you can do with your book, we now have audiobook narrator Joe Sands.
Yes, that just happens to be an audiobook narrator. So yay.
So we're going to ask her a few questions about audiobook narrations. Number one, how does an author find an audiobook narrator?
Well, there are several different routes that you can go. If you the independent route, a lot of indie authors go to ACX, which is a platform which matches and it allows the author to select a narrator. So it puts the author and the narrator together. You can have the narrators audition and you can select the one who sounds best for you, who you think will best tell your story or bring your story to life. There are also independent companies that record audiobooks, and they actually, some of them already have narrators selected in their pool of artists. And so you can only choose from those groups. And it gets to be a little pricey. With those, you definitely have to pay up front. When you go through a platform such as ACX, and I just say that because that's one that's commonly used by a lot of indie authors, you have different options of royalty share, where you don't have to come up with any upfront money right away. It's just once the book sells, then everyone gets their pay from that. It's an inexpensive way to go, and a lot of authors do that.
Okay. Second question, Jade.
Okay. Wow. Second question, Jade. That's hilarious.
Or should it be second question, Jade?
So let's say that we found a narrator, we love them, they're not on ACX. How much would an average book cost? Like per hour, how much will
per finished hour?
Per finished hour. And okay, also, what is a finished hour?
Okay,
and then how much is it normally?
Okay, so a per finished hour is the final running time once the book is completed. It's the actual running time after the narrator has narrated the book. So you can there's a formula for this, and I'm not really good on the formula. However, let's just say your book, once the narrator finishes it, the length of it is 4.5 hours or 5 hours or 6 hours or 8 hours. Some are even 13 and up. And so for each hour, there is an hourly rate that narrator is asking for. It depends on the skill of the narrator. Some narrators, once you're doing union work or you're already in the union, I have union qualified work. I'm not in the union yet, so I can pretty much do union and non-union projects. When you select someone at that, your rate's going to get a little higher on that end. If you're picking someone who is new in the business and they're just starting out, you may be able to find someone to do it on the low end at about $50 to $100 per finish hour, if you just want numbers. An average will run around $200, $250 an hour per finished hour. When you start talking about people such as, and I don't know what their exact rates are, but when you start talking about narrators who have, very well known and well named, they're up into the hundreds and maybe even 1,000 per finished hour. So it gets pretty pricey.
We do know a well-named narrator, and
yes.
I believe the rate is around $750 an hour
per finished hour or something like that.
And that is not uncommon. And those usually do like some of your Tom Clancy's, your New York Times bestsellers, and some of your autobiographies of well-known famous people. And and they're worth every penny. They're worth every penny. There's a lot of work that goes into the research before you're even able to record the first word. You have to dissect the book, dissect the characters, do a lot of historical homework, to make sure that it comes to life.
You see, and this is how you don't share the podcast. That was going to be my next question. So can you tell us a little bit about what goes on behind the scenes of audiobook narrating, so us as authors can understand like why we're paying this kind of money,
So
or
when you
why we have to be patient also.
oh, absolutely. Okay, so it's almost like a 3 or 4 step process. There's actually a research and recording that the narrator does. And then there's editing. There's the processing, the engineering that gets all of the mouth clicks, and then you have pickups that's done to make sure that if you mispronounce a name or a word or a sentence doesn't come out right, that's the mastering part. And that is one of the most time consuming aspects. And so when an author generally writes a book and that book releases, after that, they submit it for narration. Well, the narration can take almost, depending on the book, it can take almost as long as the publishing. Generally, it doesn't take that long, but it just depends on who you go through. When you go through companies like ACX, where the narrator is also the engineer as well, not only do they have to narrate in their home studio, they also have to take that raw data and master it as well. So they're doing all of the correcting, and that takes time. So if you think in terms of per finished hour, for every hour of recorded data, you're looking at about 4 to 5 hours. Actually, it's probably a little lot more than that. I just say on an average of 5 hours for every hour of recorded data. So if your book is like 5 hours long, so just multiply that times 5. You're looking at a minimum 25 hours of editing.
Wow,
Mhm.
that's a lot. And I know you're here just talking about audiobooks, but can we talk a little bit about your podcast and how people can reach out to you and get on said podcast and hear more of your readings, of your audiobook
Oh,
narrating?
thank you. Well, the great thing about Google is you can Google and you can find me on Audible. My site is www.josandsvoice.com. The Joe Show podcast is when you go to Buzzsprout, Pandora, iHeart, just put in Joe Sands Voice and you'll see me there. And I get to talk about and interview a lot of creatives from around the world, which is really great. We have some really great in-depth conversations, kind of like what you guys are doing here. So you can get some of the behind the scenes activities on the journeys of some of these creatives. So it's pretty fun.
Thank you so much,
so
Joe,
much.
for taking time out of your day to tell us
Thank
about
you.
audiobook narration. I wish we had more time to ask you more questions, but
we don't.
so
Thank you so much.
we're going to go next from audiobook narration into the actual bits and pieces of making a career out of what you have written.
All right.